to go back to Coinbase.
Joao, is a browser wallet, it's like a credit card you can use on the internet? Is that what that is?
So the concept of a wallet is very similar to a credit card, yes. And you have many wallets depending on where you are. And they're all a signature that basically says you signed this transaction, and it is valid because you signed it. And you have a public and a private key. The public key everyone can see. So everyone can see every transaction done by a particular address. And then the private key is kept as like a password where you just basically put your stamp of approval. So you can create a new wallet really simply. So right here in this interface, I can just go here, create account, give it some name. And now I have a new wallet with a new address, right? It's empty, there's no currency in it. But if I wanted to send something to it, I could just copy this to clipboard and send money to it. But I'm gonna go to one that I have the private keys organized here. I'm gonna do that. So copy this address, Coinbase, send it over. So I'm gonna empty out my Coinbase wallet, which is about $252 in Ethereum. And I'm going to send now. Okie dokie. So now this is going to take a couple minutes probably, and soon this wallet should be updated to have the amount that I just sent over. So while we wait, we can talk a little bit more about what constitutes a wallet and an address. So you have a public ledger that's basically your username. But the important bit in crypto is you never put your name or your information in, or you don't have to, right? All you need to have is this access to the private keys of a particular set of funds. And if you have that, you can move money from it without a problem. You can accept money from anyone by just sharing with them your public key. So let's see how long this takes. And this is a big experiment. There's no guaranteed time for all these transactions to process, because these transactions aren't going through a central authority. So it's not like sending money up to Capital One for them to transfer to some user. What we're actually doing here is we're sending money in Ethereum to a network of computers around the world that are operating based on a set of rules, and they're going to determine whether or not you have the funds necessary. And if the majority of those computers agree that you do, the transaction will be added to the public ledger, which is a publicly available ledger of transactions that's ever increasing and ever, you can audit it at any point in its entirety. So as you can see here, the money came through. Now we have $318 or 0.7 Ethereum in this wallet. And we can go to step 2. So real quick, is there any questions on step 1? I'm sure there are many, but does someone want to ask something while we're here? I'm going to keep going then. And we'll save some questions for whenever you guys want to ask or at the end. Okay, so step 2 is, we just did this actually, which is move Ethereum from Coinbase into a web-based wallet. So now we have access to those funds on the internet. And now we want to take those funds and collateralize it, right? Basically, this money is pretty useless to me right now. It's just saving, and I'm speculating on the price of Ethereum. If I think Ethereum is more valuable, this will go up. If it loses value, it'll go down, but it's just sitting there. It's not really being very useful to me. What I'm gonna do is put it, lock it up in a contract and take out money against it. And we can see how that works. So I'm gonna go to a protocol here. Oh man, called Oasis. And the interesting thing here is all these websites aren't run by a central party. So I'm not going to like google.com that's run by a server run by Google. This is a website that just plugs into the internet in a decentralized way. No one controls the data here except for the person signed in with the keys, right? So right now, I'm signed in to this with, so if I were to refresh this page, or rather, let me go to a new tab. I'm gonna go borrow Dai. I'm gonna connect my wallet. So I have my wallet that I just showed you. I'm just gonna connect to it using this middleware, this like intermediary software called MetaMask. And then boom, I'm in here and I can now deposit my ETH and then generate a stable currency called DAI that is pegged 1-to-1 to the dollar. So basically I can have dollar that's collateralized by ETH. So I'm going to deposit ETH. We can see that I have my 0.7879 in my wallet. You'll notice that that was in a different browser or different tab of my browser before. Doesn't matter. All these things are independent of where you're accessing them. As long as you have access to your wallet, all of these different applications can be of your service. So I'm going to deposit all of my ETH, or about 0.5 of it, into this system. What it's going to do here, and hopefully you can still see my screen. Oh man, all right, let me new share this one. Okay, so when I did that, I now have this notification to sign my transaction. Like, are you sure you want to lock these funds in this contract? And my answer is, so I have this, I'm going to up yeah, so it's going to cost me about $25 to do this. That money gets paid out to the computers that are verifying the integrity of the network in a decentralized way. So basically me paying this money is basically saying, yes, I want to use this network and I want to contribute to its sustainability. I'm going to confirm it, and that transaction is on its way. So I can see here in the upper right corner that I'm depositing 0.5 ETH into a smart contract, which are probably buzzwords that you may have heard before. And it's really complex to approach it from a theoretical angle. It's really complex to approach it from a practical angle. But so my goal here is just to show us some start state and end state, and hopefully the complexity will just drive some curiosity. And that curiosity will kind of allow you to pick these concepts apart at your leisure over time. All right, so that went through. We now have, if you look here, we now have 0.5 Ethereum locked in to the smart contract. And what I can do here is I have available to generate 134 DAI. And remember, DAI is pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar. And it's done this way through a really beautiful mechanism for keeping the value at about $1 without actually having a reserve of US dollars somewhere. It's not a centralized peg of $1. It just incentivizes arbitrage to keep the value right around $1. So we're going to generate, and you'll notice this is the cool part. So from here I can generate, let's say, if I generate 100 DAI, I will have a liquidation price of 300 USD to ETH, which means if the price of ETH drops below 300, my collateral will automatically be liquidated and I don't have to worry about any sort of dispute, right? So basically what I'm saying is I have the responsibility to take out $100 here, and I don't have an obligation to pay it back. I have to pay it back if I want to unlock my ETH and see that and realize that again. But if I don't, then the only contract I'm going into here is if the price of ETH drops, then my collateralization ratio will liquidate my portfolio here. I'm going to go ahead and generate. And again, I'm in this, I got insufficient funds here. I'm going to decrease the price slightly. Sorry, reject. Cancel, so generate. I'm going to generate, slightly. What I'm actually going to do is go to a different wallet, because the problem we're running into here is a little nuanced. But I'm trying to mint 100 DAI, which is a minimum. I have a total of 134 in my, rather I have, I don't have enough to pay the gas fee of the network. What I'm going to do is do it here though. So generate 100. Again, it's going to cost me about 27 bucks. So we're still under our about $60 threshold. And I'm going to confirm. And the price of each transaction correlates to the demand for network usage. So if there's a lot of people trying to use the network at a single point in time, there's more pressure, economic pressure, to have your transaction included into the blockchain sooner. So you're gonna have to pay more. In times of more ease, it'll be cheaper to make work. A big problem that's being solved currently is making the blockchain more scalable, so it can accommodate more transactions and be cheaper. That's kind of the big thing that needs to be solved right now. Okay, so I have my 100 DAI generated, and it is in my wallet. So long story short, I've converted dollars to ETH, I've collateralized ETH, I've taken out a digital dollar against that ETH, and now I have both exposure to the ETH, and I also have $100 to use. And what I'm going to do with that $100 is I'm going to put it in this other protocol. Again, same wallet, I just have to connect it. Okay, I'm connected. And now I'm going to, actually, I'm going to swap the DAI that I just created. So I have 100 DAI here. I'm going to, a third protocol here, Uniswap. It's going to help me swap this DAI for another digital currency. Let's call this USDC, which has a better interest rate. And I'm just going to glance over some details here. Go ahead and swap this. Again, same signing process here. Okie dokie, and just give it a minute. So what we're doing here is we have DAI, which is a stable currency pegged to $1, and we're exchanging it for another stable currency, USDC, which is a stable currency maintained by Coinbase, and they actually do have a reserve of dollars that match 1-to-1. So, but with this currency, we can actually have a better interest rate if we lend it out. So now I have my 99.6 USDC, which was just the conversion rate between those dollar pegs. Going to go into another protocol and supply the max of that USDC I just have. Supply. Another transaction here. Let's see if I have enough to do this. I hope I do. this would complete the example. Okie dokie. And if this goes through correctly, which it just did, then all of a sudden now I'm supplying USDC at a supply interest rate of $2 or of 2.9% APY, but it's compounded every 10 seconds or so.
Hello?
So it's not compounded yearly, it's compounded continuously.
Hello, ma'am. This is James from Residential Elevators calling you back.
Yes, thank you.
And
Were you able to figure out the elevator yet?
I didn't.
there we go. And yeah, so we still have exposure to ETH, and if we wanted to revert our whole financial process, we can get our ETH back. But in the meantime, I'm comfortable holding ETH because I have faith in that store of value, and now I'm using leverage to actually make money off of what I took out against that. If the price of ETH were to crash, that's the dispute that we were talking about earlier. What would happen is I would lose my ETH, but I would still keep my USD coin and it would still be earning interest here. Another fascinating part is this interest rate is entirely algorithmic determined. So it's if the more demand there is to borrow this currency, the more expensive it'll be to borrow, and the more favorable it'll be to supply it. And so there's a predetermined curve of supply and demand such that it self-adjusts to meet market demand. And the only way to change that curve is to have some decentralized form of governance decide that that is the best thing to do. There's no central party determining any of these rules. It is just computers and rules that are set ahead of time to incentivize particular behavior to make an economy work. That's the gist of the example I wanted to go through, just moving things around and showing that this is a real world thing that's happening right beneath our noses right now. It's complex, it's a little risky, but it's incredibly powerful because we just played with, a couple $100, but the fact of the matter is those fees that we paid and the time it takes to do it are fixed. It'll take $40 to move and collateralize millions of dollars. And it's entirely, and there's no, you're not bearing any more risk if you're moving more money than less money in this context, because it's all playing according to the same rules. And anyone can buy an asset, collateralize it, and take out a loan against it without ever sharing any personal identity. Right. It's all open source too. So you can see the code, you can have a friend audit it for you. There's a lot of due diligence done by the community to make sure these things work and are trustworthy. But the fact of the matter is we're still in the Wild West days, and a lot of the people actually putting money here are taking some early on risk, right? The interesting thing is Ethereum is now valued at about like 20 billion or so. So there's a lot of money here, and this has been a technology in the works for about five years now. And we know Bitcoin's been around for about 10 years. But Ethereum, you can actually create these programs, these contracts that you can move money and create rules. Whereas Bitcoin is purely a transactional peer-to-peer transfer of money. That's why I'm really excited to kind of broaden people's perceptions of crypto past Bitcoin and into the world of Ethereum and other technologies being built here. That's the gist. And so I've written down all of the websites I used and kind of some basic information. There's also this really incredible book written by Camilla Russo that kind of paints like the story behind the start of Ethereum and the movement itself. And I thought this quote was particularly insightful here. I'm going to read it out loud. Of course, nobody was actually preparing to overthrow governments, protest in front of banks, or clash with police on the streets. Rather, it was a revolution based on technology and cryptography, which would unfold in a parallel universe where traditional finance laws didn't apply, and everything was being built from scratch. At first, nobody would notice or care about these outcast hackers, so their logic went, until it would be too late. The revolution had started with Bitcoin, and now Ethereum opened up a whole new arsenal in this underground fight toward a decentralized future. And this book was written several years ago, but it's particularly interesting in today's world, where there are clashes with police on streets, there are protests in fronts of banks, there are attempts to, overthrow local and national governments. And it feels to me as though the real, like this powerful revolution of finance is happening in this invisible world. But I'm excited to share and be available as like a resource to my local community here in Chapel Hill, because I think it's really important that we all are tuned in and aware of like what's coming, and doesn't just advantage the few and disadvantage the many. And that's my talk.
Well, thank you. Super interesting. I know there's a few questions. I was just looking in the chat or live chat, and then also a couple people have raised their hands. But Earl Chesson was the first person I saw who had a question, and I can ask that for him if Earl's not there. But Earl asks, how safe are the wallets, web-based versus hardware wallet, and are coins safe to be left on Coinbase?
Great questions. So the keys are everything, right? I personally use, can you guys see my actual person here? So I personally, every transaction that we just did, I signed using a hardware wallet. So my keys are stored in here, and I just have to unlock it with a passcode to sign. I don't know if you guys just saw that, but right here. Like that to me is the safest way, because I don't have to remember or have a piece of paper stored somewhere. I just have to keep my key on me. It's also, I think a huge thing now is a huge frontier of innovation is custodial wallets, right? So Coinbase actually holding your funds for you. You lose some of the responsibility aspect, which is really where you gain from like
our generation doesn't.
Yeah. I think so. The beauty of the environment is you assume the responsibilities after your own keys. There's no customer service. There's no one to call. You have the responsibility, but with that comes great power. Right? You can actually make decisions and not necessarily delegate to a middleman, but there's a lot of risk involved. And so finding the balance between that risk is really interesting to me. And Coinbase does a really great job of keeping things safe and custodial for you.
I know that Jim Hebner had a question. Jim, are you there still?
Yeah. Quickly, there must be something to this, or the world wouldn't be talking about it that much. But I think you'd said, it strikes me that there's $20 billion sitting somewhere in this system that could collapse overnight, and that would be a rounding error in the United States currency. The question that I have is that historically, currency, we have faith in currency because it is traditionally backed by the full faith and credit of the issuing country. We have confidence in the government of the United States, so we feel comfortable in that currency. We wouldn't put money in that. I don't think I want to have money in banks in Venezuela or Zimbabwe, as Brian Keefe would tell us. It seems to me that this money is lost somewhere in a computer system that is not backed by the full faith and credit of anyone. And you just said that there's no one to call, no place to go if the money goes away in something out there because there is no place out there. How are you secure?
Great question. So it's not stored in one computer. So the beautiful part about the computer system is that it's stored redundantly in many computers all over the world. And
but what creates the discipline? Where's the discipline in that system that is subject to the kinds of checks and balances that make government currency safe?
Absolutely. It's the same. It's a similar, if we abstract both back to game theory, right? You have some trust in a mechanism. The government is a entirely relevant one here. The trust model in the computer world is you have these algorithms that incentivize behavior by many hundreds, and honestly anyone. Like you could start a validating Ethereum node on your computer that would basically just be checking transactions all day and validating that everyone's is behaving. And if someone misbehaves, you as a person running one of these nodes can raise a red flag. And if you raise a red flag, other computers are going to start to like investigate. And all this happens automatically, right? But the beautiful part about it is it isn't one central server. It isn't one Wells Fargo server that's actually manipulating the bits. It is redundant and over anyone. Yeah, and so so if Wells Fargo were to be hacked, for instance, you'd probably rely on the government to bail it out and make the people whole in some capacity. There's insurance that kind of there's probably mechanisms of insurance to help the citizens out. In this world, we're trusting that this computer is not hackable, right? Because it hasn't been hacked before, and because it's designed in a way to really mitigate that risk.
Very interesting. Let's let, I'm going to have Rob Maitland. I know Rob had a question. Rob, let's let you close it out with the last question.
Well, Joe, I think it's such an interesting topic. How do you borrow money on the system, for example, to buy a house? How do you get money out of the system more than you have in it?
So great question. Right now you can't. So an interesting thing is the only assets that are collateralizable right now are digital assets. But what's in the pipeline is tokenized real world assets. And you can actually already buy tokenized gold, for instance, that's pegged to the price of gold in the market. And it's kept that way by a network of decentralized price aggregators. So basically you can own prices of physical assets in the digital world and borrow against those. But that's the frontier right now, is creating these synthetic assets to represent real world things. At that point, you will be able to do something with it. But it's a great question. Like right now, you can't borrow against what you don't have. So you have to at least have the collateral handy. It's a start, right? Like think about financial system when it was first, one of many financial systems throughout history when it was first being bootstrapped, right? What are the fundamental building blocks? Okay, now how can we add one more layer of building blocks? Okay, cool. And now how can we broaden the use case to more and more people? That's where we currently are in this journey.
Well done.
So, Zhao, let me ask you if I could. Zhao, we have a very good friend in Rotary, John Perry. Now, he's in banking, and I'm very worried now for his future, because I think you give a convincing case that in time, poor John, he's going to be, unless you convert him and get him into your team, he's going to be obsolete.
I'm hoping that human interaction will continue to play a role in trust, right? And that we'll still be able to have people responsible for finances in this world, and have other people responsible for medicine, and have other people responsible for the arts, and we can all collaborate and have each other's best interest at heart, right? It pains me that right now, finance folks sometimes are too selfish and the society doesn't trust. And then there's like this mistrust everywhere, but hopefully we can get to a point where you still have people responsible for finances, and you have a community of people who are looking after one another to store wealth and to grow prosperity for each other. So hopefully Mr. Perry still has, he has some mental modeling to kind of make progress on perhaps, but hopefully if the curiosity is of finance and of keeping his clients and his people whole, there's plenty of business to go around.
Good. It's reassuring. Thank you, Zhao. Obrigados.
No prazer. Thank you all so much. This is a lot of fun. And
thank you so much.
I'll pass around this deck. There's a couple of links if you want to poke around. And if anyone has the courage to try it and needs a hand and some support, I'd be glad to do one-on-one sessions.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and hope it wish everybody a happy and safe weekend, and look forward to seeing everybody again next Friday. Take care, guys.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.